Post-purchase, unfortunately, is the step that most brands overlook, but it is the biggest lever to being successful in my point of view.
Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the E-Commerce Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Curry, CEO of OMG Commerce. And today I've got an old friend joining me on the pod, John MacDonald. He is the founder and CEO of The Good. And very few people on the planet understand online buying behavior, shopping behavior, conversion rate optimization like John. And so we're going to be talking about John's new book, Behind the Click, and talking about psychological forces that shape the way people shop online. And so some really cool topics we're going to dive into here to make your shopping experience better so that you can delight customers and engage them and get them to convert more. So with that, John, welcome to the show, man. And how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me again. Yeah, we have known each other for quite some time now. It's been great.
I think this is maybe podcast number 3, 4. I don't even know. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm trying to remember when the first podcast we did together was. It was well before COVID. So we're talking 2017 or something, 2018.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Well, we're both OGs in this business, right? So here we are.
No doubt, man. No doubt. So really excited about diving into the book. And so what was kind of what's the big idea behind the book? And there's some really practical stuff that we're going to unpack here as we go. But what was the big idea and why write a book about it?
Well, I really wrote a book. I mentioned I'm an OG. I guess been in CRO for 15 plus years now. It's hard to believe I started The Good that long ago. But the more work we've done to optimize conversion rates, the more we've realized that to make real lasting gains, you have to pull back way further than just the conversion. And there's so many factors that affect conversion, from psychological, deeply ingrained factors that we deploy every day. And they happen before the customer even begins to think about purchasing from you. And so every element of your website tells the customer something about why they do or do not want to work with or buy from you, right? So I didn't want to just tell people tactics to use to kind of optimize those digital journeys, right? There's so many tactics out there. I would say CRO is actually becoming a bit of a commodity, right?
It is.
Dare I say that word, but it 100% is, right? I wanted to show more about why these digital journey issues occur. Why are your conversion rates low? And why a specific tactic might work for your specific audience, right? And explain that. When it all comes down to it, right, you have to explain it as fundamental psychology behind the issues so that the teams that we're talking to can come up with solutions that work for that specific audience. Realizing that decisions online are not just logical, but so heavily influenced by psychological factors that I felt like it had to be said. I had to bridge this gap by applying psychological principles to improving digital experiences and try to rise above that commoditization that's happening, the checklist world that is out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. And certainly there's value to saying things like, hey, better headlines on your product detail pages, headlines that are benefit oriented and that highlight the features, and better product imagery and add to cart above the fold and some of those things. But those are sort of table stakes, right? That's potentially the commoditized part of this. But understanding the psychological factors behind why we do what we do as shoppers, what we're looking for, really matters. And so I'm going to recommend 2 other books. Obviously, first of all, shameless plug for you. Get the book Behind the Click. But 2 other books. Have you read the book Alchemy?
I have.
By Rory Sutherland, I believe. Yeah, I love this. He talks about, hey, some problems in business and in sales and in social settings are not, they don't require a logical solution, because humans aren't always that logical, right? And he uses the term psychological, not like psychotic, but like using psychology and logic. And he talks about how, sometimes what you do to get people to donate more to a charity is not the logical thing. It's kind of almost an illogical thing. And so understanding the psychology there is very important. And then one book that I know you and I both love, Why We Buy by Paco Underhill. I love how he talks about simple things like, hey, when you first walk into the store, this is like a physical store, brick and mortar retail store, you need a landing space, right? Yeah. And you need to feel comfortable. And people are making decisions in those first few seconds like, am I going to politely scoot out of here as quick as I can? Or am I going to go deeper? And is this the right store for me? I'm looking at the people. I'm looking at the products. Is this store for me? Am I in the right place? And I think a lot of those principles apply with nuance to the online experience. And so really excited to dive in here. And in fact, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Let's talk about kind of first impressions. So when someone lands on our site, whether that's homepage, landing page, wherever they land, they're making evaluations, right? And I know in your book you talk about there are two questions, and actually more than this, but two questions you mentioned that I really like. One is, does this company understand me? And two, does this company have a solution to my problem? And so kind of unpack those for us a little bit, and how do we think about those so that we can craft an experience that really delights customers?
Well, I think you hit it on the head with the landing area in a retail store, right? I am a firm believer, and I know you've heard me mention this several times over the years, that you really should treat your e-commerce site as if it was a retail store. Meaning, if you wouldn't do it in retail, don't do it on your e-com. Too many brands turn visitors into a number as opposed to a human, because they can with e-commerce. It's easier. But there are the same psychological principles at play here. With that landing, what Paco was trying to talk about was basically two psychological factors that then lead to the questions that you mentioned. The first is anchoring bias, right? So this is the idea that people will overly rely on that first piece of information that they encounter. So if you don't have a good landing home spot, they're going to bounce, right? They're going to turn around and leave the store or move off your website. And then confirmation bias, which is the tendency to give more weight to information that aligns with pre-existing beliefs. So, if somebody came to your site via an ad, or a friend referred them, whatever that ad or that friend said really needs to be reinforced when they get to the site, because they already have this pre-existing belief from that referral or that ad, right? And so this is where people are asking themselves, does this company understand my problem? Because consumers are only at your site for two reasons, and that's to understand if you can solve their pain or need. And if you can, convert and then leave as quickly and easily as possible, get on with their lives. Nobody's at your site to hang out, right? So really, that first question of, does this company understand my problem, is all about crafting that first impression, making sure that you have a great anchor to reinforce along that entire digital journey that follows. So open that welcome mat, right? Make sure you're speaking the same language that was prompted to get them there. And then you have to follow it up pretty quickly with, does this company understand or have a solution to my problem? If you do understand it, then can you solve it? Okay. So this is really where I recommend brands do user testing to determine what your customers' needs and what their assumptions are, because they're coming to your site with these assumptions formed by that first question. Like, I have a problem. Do they understand it? And then they're going to have all these assumptions that come out of that. And so really what you need to do is address both of those questions immediately within the first third of the homepage, if you can, or whatever landing page they're on, which is where it becomes a little more of a broader site journey, right? If you have an ad, you should take them directly to a landing page that addresses the content of that ad. Don't just send them to a product detail page. Don't just send them to a home page, right? Make sure there's alignment there if you send them to a specific page.
Yeah, it's so good. And so talk about some specifics here, or maybe what would be helpful is looking at some examples. So what are some companies, what are some sites that do this really well?
Well, what I can tell you is how many SaaS sites have you been to, SaaS products that we use every day? You go to the site and you're like, I have no idea what this company does.
Yeah.
Right? It's word soup. Right? You're like, oh my gosh, like what are they trying to say? I can't tell you what they do. They're trying to talk to too many people. And this is really where I think even a lot of e-commerce brands struggle, is they don't have a very clear ideal customer profile that they are speaking to. And this is where, like working with OMG, et cetera, where you would run ads, very specific segments that take them to very specific landing pages that when you marry those two up can really address both of these questions very quickly and get people into that next phase of information gathering. But I would say in terms of good sites that do this, the reality is I am not a fan of looking at competition. I'm a fan of focusing on yourself. And I talk about it in this book quite a bit. I know I talked about it a lot in the last book, Opting into Optimization. But the reality is that there's a reason racehorses wear blinders. If you want to get to the finish line first, the quickest path is directly there, right? Straight line between 2 points. If you're consistently looking around and looking at the competition, who knows if what they're doing works for them? Who knows if you're being opted into an A/B test? Who knows if that tactic was brought by an executive or recommended from customers, or their private equity firm said, you have to say this, right? Nobody knows what the situation is except for them. So I'm a huge fan of, instead of looking at your competitors or trying to copy from others, is talking to your customers and asking them what brought you here, right? What are you looking to solve? Do you think we can solve your problem? Looking at your customers' information is really going to get you where you want to be much quicker than looking at competitors.
Yeah, I think it's important to be aware of the competition, but be obsessed with your customers, right?
Yes.
And I think if you, to use that racehorse analogy, you do want the racehorse to focus, but there's also something about feeling the other horses around them. Maybe some horses go faster, right? And so we can do that too. Like knowing the competition is there, I'm getting up earlier, I'm working harder, I'm aware of what they're doing, but I'm not copying what they're doing. I'm thinking about, who is my customer? What do they want? How can I delight them? And you really know that by doing user testing, by watching your data, by doing surveys and things like that. And so if you do that, man, you are really set up for success.
Well, and this is where, if you notice, a lot of these, I have a bunch of breakouts in the book. And if you look at a lot of these, you'll see that they're wireframes, right? I specifically did not mention who the clients were. I did not mention specifically any of the branding. I left all of that out and I broke it down to just simple wireframes, because what's important is understanding the psychology behind what was deployed, not who did it and whether or not it was going to work for you in that same manner. I wanted to show an example of something in use. I specifically tried not to mention brands in this book as much.
Nice. Okay, so if we're going to answer the questions of, is this product for me, or does this company understand me, and can they solve my problems? What are just a couple of tips? I know we already talked about a few, but a couple of tips to how do we make sure we're addressing that properly?
Well, I think the first thing you need to understand here is, with that anchoring bias, you really need to answer that quickly, right? So right up front, it should be the main headline. Too many e-commerce brands focus on pushing one new product or have heaven forbid, a auto rotating banner with lots of marketing, right? You really need to, at that stage, in this discovery phase, these consumers, they're being pretty selfish, right? Like, I don't want to spend my time here if it's not going to help solve these problems I have, right? So with that in mind, really want to focus on very quickly addressing those two questions right up front and center, and making sure that you're doing testing on that to make sure that consumers align with it. Now, the biggest issue I see is that too many brands continue to market when somebody gets to the site. Really, at that point, I'm under the belief that your marketing has won. People are at the site. It's now time to facilitate a sale. I'm not saying that you deploy tactics, black hat tactics, et cetera, that are really pushing people in that direction. But I do think this is a problem that a lot of e-commerce marketers get wrong, right? They think that their website is a great repository for all this marketing, when the reality is it just creates more challenges for the consumer to get through that information. And it's unfortunate. It's like an epidemic that I see all over the place. But
really great point. I think it kind of leads to our next topic. One thing I just want to call out really quickly related to this, I think part of this is just really deeply understanding your customer. And I think to do that, sometimes you have to do things that don't scale, like talking to your customer, talking to your customer on the phone, and doing surveys and things like that. And I'll give you a quick example. One client of ours, Rev Air, really unique hair drying appliance. It's kind of like a reverse hair dryer. You kind of have to see it to really understand how it works. But Scott, the inventor of the product and the founder of the company, brilliant engineer and inventor. And so it's almost like a reverse hair dryer where you put your hair in it and it kind of pulls air through and dries it. Anyway, I created it for his family, for his daughters. Turns out, as he started to get to know customers, women with type 4 hair, which I was unfamiliar with the types of hair, but largely the African-American population falls into type 4 hair. It's like revolutionary. This product works like nothing else. Wow. But they only found that out as they really got to know customers and talk to customers. And so then that really shaped the whole experience on what they did online and who they featured on the landing page, who they featured in their ads, and how they position things. But it really comes down to how well do you know your customers? Because I would argue, John, as I talk to e-commerce brands, there's a lot of brands that really don't know who their customer is. Yeah, our customer is a woman that's 35 to 54. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything, right? So you got to know your customer.
Yeah, and one of the best ways we found to get that information is to talk to your customer service team.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're the ones on the front lines. Right. They are addressing the questions that come in. They're the ones where if you say, hey, for 1 week, I want you to fill out this simple Google form every time you have a conversation and just answer a couple of quick questions. And really it's, what type of question are you answering, so you can filter by that. And then, what was the question they had, or what topic did you address? And is there anything else you'd like me to know? Within a couple of days, you're going to start seeing similarities. And we had this issue years ago now with Easton Baseball. They make bats for Little League.
Around forever.
Yeah, in fact, if I can point, there's a bat right up there they gave us.
I see it. Yeah, it says the good. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
With their logo next to it. And so, but they, they were basically, if you went to their website, you just got a wall of bats, right? And they all look the same. If you can imagine, right, a small picture of a bat, they all look exactly the same in a grid, right?
Yep.
And parents had no idea what bats to buy their children. Okay. But the kids were like, I need an Easton bat. It's Little League. This is what everybody swings. Okay, great. So what they started doing is we had them talk to their customer service team and said, what are the biggest challenges? Well, we're getting a lot of returns and phone calls from parents that are upset. I said, oh, wow. Okay. Tell me more about that. Well, the problem is the kids would go and use it for batting practice before a game, and they'd warm up with a bat, put a couple dings on it, scuff marks or whatever. And then they'd get up to the plate and the umpire wouldn't let them swing with the bat. And they say, oh, that bat's not certified for this league. You can't use it. And the parents were so upset because they had no idea that there are different types of bats for the different leagues that have to be certified. And I can't imagine what it was like buying a bat on that site beforehand. So what we decided to do was, okay, let's create a quick quiz. First question, what league is your kid in? Second question, that filters it down to like maybe 10 bats. Second question, what type of hitter are they? Because not every kid is swinging for the fences, right? Just it's the way it is in Little League. Okay, we can answer that question really easily. A parent knows their kid, right? And then next was budget. If you answered those 3 questions, you were able to get it down to like 1, maybe 2 bats. And all of a sudden, it's a no-brainer as a parent. Do I want to spend 400 or 200? Right? And okay, I'll spend 400. I know this bat is going to work for my kid now because I feel much more confident about it. They're going to go, not have to return it. And this led to a massive 247% increase in online sales.
Wow.
Not to mention the fact that they had severely reduced returns. And so all in all, in terms of revenue, I mean, the return on investment of just talking to your customer service team like that is huge.
Yeah, and this really underscores something you said earlier, that nobody wants to hang out on your website, right? Unless you are Bass Pro Shops, the physical store. If people want to go and look at the museum and just dream about boats or whatever, like they don't want to hang out at your site. So no parent. But I think probably what Easton did, which is what a lot of companies do, is like, oh, you want a bat? We have 5,000. Which would you like? And we're like,
right.
I don't know. I'm just going to pick one, or let my kid pick one, or something.
Well, they were filtering by
choice.
They were filtering by color. They were filtering by technical terms.
We don't know.
And these technical terms were invented by Easton. It wasn't even like industry standard terms. It was their branding team and their marketing team saying, we want to be different, so we're going to name some of these new technologies we have, and everyone's going to be excited about them. And meanwhile, the parents are like, I don't know what that means. It sounds cool, but like, right? Yep. So, once you start talking to the consumers, you understand what their challenges are, and you can help them through that information phase.
Yeah, really good. And so that really kind of leads to some of the next questions you mentioned in the book that you talk about is, can I find what I'm looking for? And to go back to kind of Paco Underhill and talking about the in-store experience, it's even more true there, where a lot of shoppers don't want to ask questions. Now, if I'm in a retail store, I'm going to ask, where is the whatever? Because I don't care what I look like. I just want to go get it and get out of there. But a lot of people won't ask. And so if someone feels confused, they don't want to look like an idiot, they're probably going to ask in store. And I think online it's the same, right? Like we don't want to work hard. We don't want to feel like an idiot trying to find what we're looking for. So how do we address that? How do we address that online? Quizzes, great example. How do we make it easy for someone to find what they're looking for?
Well, I think what you need to understand first is that there's really 2 types of shoppers, and neither really wants to ask questions of anybody else. But the satisficers, they're called, are the folks who will take that first solution to their problem and buy it and move on with their lives as quickly as possible.
And what'd you call this shopper again?
Satisfier.
Okay.
Right. And then there is what's called the maximizer. The maximizer is somebody who is going to go in and open on 25 browser tabs. They're going to go to all the competitors. They're going to line up everything, compare, contrast. They're going to Amazon and doing all this research. And then each of the individual brands of the products they find on Amazon, they're going to their sites. These are the folks that no matter how big the purchase is, and you would think this might vary based on the dollar amount being spent or the importance to the life of the person buying it. Not true. There are people who will go buy the first car they see on a car lot. And that's a expensive purchase, right? In most people's lives, right? Or there are people who will go and buy a basketball and they'll do so much research about what the best outdoor basketball is and what's going to last the longest and have the most grip, whatever, right? The reality is that no matter what your price point is, there's these 2 types of consumers. You need to answer their questions. But it's not just figuring out what the questions are and answering them. You need to not overwhelm the consumer. So you need to provide the information. And the best at doing this I've seen is Amazon. Amazon really is good at this because they give you all the bullet points up front, right? The short information, a few photos, and then you can add to cart or buy now, right? But if you scroll down, you see on almost every product, even if the brand of the product has not done this, Amazon will do it. They'll do a comparison table. Here's the one you're looking at. Here's some other options. And they'll have the comparison table where they are very easily showing you how they align. Now, that is for the maximizer, right? They're trying to keep them on Amazon instead of going someplace else. So as a brand, what questions you're answering are going to differ based on your products, but those two types of people you need to make sure you're addressing really quickly the bullet points. Yes, this aligns. I'm going to buy it and get on with my life. Or here's the bullet points, but here's more information that you probably want to. And if you can address that in a way that does not overwhelm the satisfiers, then you are in a good spot.
Yeah, and I think, looking at the satisfier and the maximizer and then trying to kind of assess, like, who am I as a shopper? I think I kind of depends on what I'm buying. I'm probably more maximizer if it's a larger ticket item. Like when I went to buy my truck, I really analyzed a lot of things and I watched a ton of YouTube videos on four-wheel drive trucks and like I really nerded out and had fun with it. If I'm buying a pizza cutter or something like that off of Amazon, I'm just going to look at reviews and like, does the picture look okay? And the worst thing that's going to happen is I don't like it and I give it to somebody else or whatever. Because I really don't return things. I don't know if that's what I've learned about myself. If I buy something on Amazon, if this was a really expensive purchase, I'm probably just going to give it to somebody. It's too much trouble
to
love
return it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, but I think looking at it that way. So for the satisfier, if I can neatly package what's the minimum amount of information that someone will need to know to feel comfortable making this purchase? Can I make that instantly obvious with the pictures, with the bullet points, with the title, like make that instantly obvious? And then if it's somebody that's really getting into comparison shopping, then tables, charts, graphs, videos, other things that we can provide. In another category, I like coffee a lot.
Yeah.
And John, I like coffee paraphernalia. I've got a pretty nice coffee maker. I've got the espresso machine. I've got a nice grinder. I buy, quality beans. So if I'm like looking at a new coffee accessory, I'm probably going to check it out, right? Because I'm having fun in the process. And so, having those kind of dual paths or enough information for both types of shoppers, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I would 100% say you are a maximizer through and through. Even though you gave the example of the pizza cutter, because the folks who are satisfiers, what they will do is go and say the first image on Amazon when they type in pizza cutter, it will say Amazon's choice. They'll click that and then add it to cart right away.
Okay, yeah, that's not me. All right.
Right? So they won't even look at the photos. They're not going to look at the reviews. They're just like, it's a pizza cutter. It's backed by Amazon, says it's their choice. Let's go. It does the job. I'm out of here. Right? So that's where it's kind of like, you don't want to get in the way of those people because that's easy conversions, right? So make sure there's that easy path as well.
Yeah, I remember there's a great sales analogy. I remember one of my first sales managers that I had, and I started selling when I was in college. And one thing they said was, hey, when someone is ready to buy, when someone has said yes, shut up.
Yeah.
Stop selling and take the order. I just start signing the contract because you could talk yourself out of it if you keep going. And I think there's some online application to that as well. So
definitely,
really, really good. Any other thoughts, kind of on the information gathering stage? One other brilliant question that you asked in the book, which I love this so much. Then this is a question that customers are asking: who else has purchased this product? And if I join them, what does that say about me? So can you unpack that for us?
Well, really what you need to do here is show them exactly what the purchasing choice says about them to other people, right? So how do you do that? Well, social proof is huge here at this stage, right? Because I want to look at not only what the results were or how happy other people are, but who are these other people? Right? This is where influencers come in and why influencers have blown up over the past decade. Social media has definitely helped that, but it's just made it an easy vehicle to address this concern and this question. Now, celebrities, all the way back before internet, you had like, maybe not the best example, but O.J. Simpson running through the airport for Hertz, right? Like at the time, he was well known enough, and
Dude, he was so like lovable until he wasn't, right? Like the Naked Gun movies, he was in those. Exactly. Brilliant. The Hertz commercials. Yeah.
Whole nother story. But the reality is that was saying, hey, you know, I like that. I too have had to run through airports to get to my rental car. Like, how cool is that? I could, you know, that's relatable, right? And so you start saying, oh wow, even he had to do that, right? So you have to start thinking about these types of things of how are you relating to the customers and making it realize that they are part of the community now, right? And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's loyalty programs, there's forums, online forums, but there's, you know, ways to have these influencers do more than just post a social post or a video, but be more involved. Maybe come into a studio and make a whole video about how this has changed their lives or something of that sort, right? This is also where infomercials on TV work really, really well for this specific reason, right? Like, oh yeah, I can see myself in that situation or whatever, right? So I think this is one of those things where, going back to the psychology of it, all the way back to evolutionary, way a long time ago, as humans, if we were in a pack, had a unit together with several of us, we were safer than if we were off alone by ourselves. Right. So the inherent need to feel like we're part of a group is hardwired into our psychology as humans. And it's unlikely to change. So, you know, and this is where, like, even just going back to a few years ago, COVID was so hard for so many people because we are hardwired to be social.
Yep.
And when we couldn't be as social, because of factors outside of our own control, it became really difficult for folks. And so that just pinpoints, again, the psychology that is deep rooted in each of us that we need to be taking into consideration when we are building these digital journeys and driving people to our website and trying to get them through to conversion.
Yeah, and that's why celebrity endorsements mean so much, even though that doesn't seem super logical, right? If I buy Patrick Mahomes cleats, I'm not going to run or pass like Patrick Mahomes, but it works. Influencers, micro-influencers, they work because every buyer is thinking, what if I buy this product? What does it say about me? Either the way it makes me feel, if I'm the only one that knows that I bought this, if it's something that maybe isn't publicly displayed, or what will other people think about me if I buy this? And so, yeah, it's a really important question that people maybe aren't asking out loud or thinking about consciously necessarily, but they are thinking about it. And so you've got to address it with your landing pages, with your homepage, with your ads. Is this product for me? And what does it say about me? Love that question. So good.
Yeah. And you can see how you wouldn't be able to answer that question effectively unless you've answered the other questions we talked about first.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So these all kind of build on each other as part of that journey.
Yeah, really good. And so then kind of moving on to like the purchase and conversion stage. So now we're really clear on, hey, this is designed for me. It will solve my problem. I am in the right place, type of thing. It's also saying, hey, this is for people like me, and it's going to communicate something to my community that I want to communicate. So then now, how do we get someone to purchase? And so you talk about making an emotional appeal. So getting someone ready to convert, so kind of slightly pre-conversion, getting them ready to convert by making an emotional appeal. Can you explain that a bit?
Well, the emotional appeal is if you are answering the questions up to this point effectively, logically, they're saying, yeah, okay, this is the right product for me. I could probably fit in here. Now is time to do that emotional angle, right? Because we're ready for it. Our psychology is ready for it at that point. One of the best ways to do this is to make customers feel like they already own that product, right? So what is their life going to be like after they have this product? Okay, you're buying a pizza cutter, right? Now, last thing, we have family pizza night every Friday here. We have one of those unis out on our deck, homemade pizza oven things.
Love it, man.
And I can tell you the last thing I want to be doing is messing around with a pizza cutter when I'm trying to just enjoy pizza with my family, etc. It should just be something that's done and I don't even think about, right?
Right.
So the emotional appeal here would be, wow, what would it be like if the pizza cutter didn't cut right? Right? If it was too hard to use, right? Have you ever used one of those ones that you see at pizza shops that like rocks back and forth?
Yeah,
Like,
I've never used one. No, are those great?
well, they're great if you want to lose a finger, right? So
Don't give that to your 8-year-old. Here you go.
Exactly.
This, a machete.
Exactly. So, you have to really be showing people what it's like in their houses and why a pizza, it's like, hey, here's a safe alternative, or here's a good option for have your 8-year-old use it, right? So they can be more independent, et cetera. So start talking about things like that. They're going to hit on emotional appeal of what it's like when they already own that product. What's it going to be like in day-to-day use? How's it going to improve their lives in a way that's not just logical? Right? Like that car can get you from A to B. And, maybe though, you really want to enjoy the smooth ride because you're going to be in that car and you're going to be driving 50 miles each way every day. Right? So you just want a comfortable ride. Right? So you'll see some ads on TV that will talk about how quiet the interior is, etc. Right? That's more of somebody helping somebody realize that they're in that position. And that is the emotional appeal to them.
So one thing I want to mention right here, and I'm open to suggestions, and maybe you have one, John. Mm-hmm. We do pizza night on occasion. It's not a regular thing. I applaud you for that. It sounds super fun. I don't know that we've ever purchased a nice pizza cutter. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if we're buying in the wrong place or buying the wrong, I don't even know what brands we're buying, but like, it seems like every time I turn around, there's a new pizza cutter in the drawer and they're all terrible. So if you've got a good recommendation or someone listening's got a good recommendation, I am all ears.
Can I tell you what we do?
Yes, please.
Okay. Get a knife sharpener and sharpen the blade occasionally. That is the key, because they all just go dull almost.
Just go dull. I guess just it's a knife, just like anything else.
Right. Exactly. And that's what people don't realize is I had a friend when they came over, they were here just for pizza night one night, came over and hung out with us as well. And they were like, wow, do you have a knife sharpener? And I was like, yeah, okay, here you go. And they sharpened the blade on it. And now I'm like, wow, I'd never thought to do that. So that's the hint. Don't spend your money.
I never have thought about that either. So we just throw the pizza cutter away and buy new ones all the time.
Yep.
Just got to sharpen the blade. All right. Well, that was a pro tip right there. That's a free tip. Optimizing your pizza night, courtesy of John MacDonald. Thanks, John. That's awesome. So speaking of making emotional appeals, and it's so important to make an emotional appeal, there's a couple things I want to point out. I heard this quote from a guy named Roy Williams a long time ago where he said, no person goes physically where they haven't first gone in their mind. And so and that includes clicking a button to purchase. I don't click a button to purchase unless I've already pictured it in my mind, pictured owning that product and what that's going to be like. And I think if you look at the advertising greats, and you talked about quiet interior, made me think of the famous David Ogilvy Rolls Royce ad, right, where it says that 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise you'll hear is the clock on the dash, right? And so you're just picturing, I'm in this luxurious ride, we're cruising down the highway, and I'm hearing the ticking of the clock, right? And so we've got to go there mentally, emotionally, before they're actually going to do it in real life. So love that. Make the emotional appeal. What else? What else are we doing here to make the purchase, to guide someone and make it easy for them to say yes and buy?
Well, I think the last thing to really be thinking about is if addressing that if they think this is the wrong choice eventually, what is the worst possible outcome that they could experience?
Yeah.
Right? So really what you want to do here is eliminate all of those possible issues that they could have. What's the easiest way to do that? Well, offer some type of guarantee. Right? So build trust with them throughout the process up to here, that you understand who they are. You're talking directly to them. You're making it easy for them, whether they are a satisfier or a maximizer. All those things that we've done up to now should have built some trust. Okay. Now guarantee, right? So if you do a guarantee now, they're going to trust your guarantee because they already have built up some trust through the rest of that process, right? Then if anything goes wrong, they know they can get help. They know that you are going to take good care of them, right? There are so many examples of when things go bad or wrong in a purchase, and then you end up saying, wow, this was a horrible experience. I'm never buying from them again. But if they have built trust up with me and I get a hold of them, because like you said earlier, the last thing I want to do is ask for help. So the last thing I want to do is contact them to get help, get a replacement, whatever it is. So if they make that super easy, I'm all in. We just had a good example. We just had a soap dispenser from Simple Human, right? They make really cool, like modern homeware stuff. And it was just a soap dispenser in our kitchen, and it stopped pumping. It was like an automatic one, to touch whatever. It stopped pumping. And I sent them an email. Last thing I want to spend my time on. It was just like, hey, this stopped pumping. What can we do? And they're like, no worries, has a 2-year warranty. We'll send a box right now with a new one. Just put the old one in the box and use the label that's inside, send it back. We're good to go. 2 days later, it was at my house. They 2 days shipped it to me. Crazy. And I shipped it right back to them. And I got an email this morning, said, hey, John, we got the shipment back. You're all good. Thanks. If anything else happens, let us know. And I was like, I'm buying your products again. You made that super simple.
And telling everybody, because this was amazing.
There we go, right? I'm telling the story right now. So again, what's the worst possible thing that could happen here? I'm without a soap dispenser for 2 days, and they send me a new one for free. Worst possible solution, right?
Yep, and turning even that negative into a surprise and delight kind of moment, yes. which is really magical. And so let's wrap up kind of by talking about post purchase. Yeah. So how can we leave shoppers on a good note, really, no matter what? Yeah,
well, I think, post-purchase, unfortunately, is the step that most brands overlook. But it is the biggest lever to being successful, in my point of view, because you're going to get your lifetime value up, and you're going to get the return on your ads up. You're going to have so much, the easiest dollar to make is when you've already sold, right? So you already know that customer. They already know you. So you want to answer 3 specific questions here. Were my expectations met, right? So help them to understand with proactive communication what's going to come next, right? The good and the bad, right? Like, oh, well, we've had customers ask this question. Our product doesn't really do that, so we wanted to call it out now, right? That is one of the best things you can do. Because again, you're building up that trust. You're helping maintain that trust. And most consumers are gonna be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Did this product or service work as it should? This is where onboarding, no matter if you're selling on e-commerce, you have a SaaS product, whatever, onboarding matters. And it can't just be a simple email flow. It really needs to be something where you send them to a video on how to use the product, how to assemble it, right? How to, thinking of the soap dispenser, like they have online videos on how to change the soap. Seems pretty easy, right? But it's actually not easy. I had to watch the video, which is how I know, but I was delighted that the fact that the video was there and worked, right? And then the third question people have is, would I make this decision again or recommend that a friend does the same, right? This is where too many brands ask for a rating or a review right after purchase. Way too early. Yeah. Way too early. You got to give them some time. Right. You don't know. And, there's some add-on services out there that you can buy that will immediately ask for reviews, and they talk about how many reviews they can get you. But those people, you're not reinforcing the positive experience yet, right? You're just racking up reviews for review's sake at that point. So
yeah, and then you're not getting good detail in those reviews either. And I think that's a really important factor. Again, for maximizers, they're probably going to read some of the reviews. Or just did a podcast with an Amazon Pro, and we were talking about with Amazon now, there's Rufus, the AI shopping assistant, and you can ask Rufus, what do customers say about this product, about XYZ? And Rufus is going to dig through those reviews and synthesize that for you.
Well, Amazon has been pulling out and saying this is a frequently returned item. Mm-hmm. And they've been denoting that now on products. Yeah. And if you're a consumer, you're going to look at that kind of with some side eye, like, oh, I guess I'll have to read the reviews, or should I just go to the next product, depending on what type of buyer you are.
So. Exactly. Yeah, so good. Well, John, we are out of time. One last plug here. Check the book out, Beyond the Click. Where can folks find the book? And also, John, for those that are like, hey, I'd like to work with John, I'd like to work with The Good and see what they can do to help my company, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the book, it's everywhere books are sold. Amazon, it was a bestseller on Amazon in multiple categories.
Congratulations. Good.
Thank you. The best place to go get a book, though, is thegood.com/BTC for Behind the Click. And there's a code you can use, BTC Podcast 50 for 50% off a copy of the book. So if you get it off of thegood.com, I'm happy to give you 50% off. My margin's the same either way. So happy to share that with everybody. Or of course, Amazon, etc., wherever you'd like to get it. If you want to get a hold of me, find me on LinkedIn. I'm so active on there. Feel free to DM me. I do read everything. That's going to be the best bet to get a hold of me personally.
Awesome. John MacDonald, ladies and gentlemen. John, really appreciate it, man. Super fun as always, and looking forward to next time.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. And as always, thank you for tuning in. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. If you liked this show, we ask that you share it. Share it with somebody else that could be inspired by it or could find it useful. And if you haven't left a review for the pod, we'd love that as well. And leave a detailed review, just like we were talking about here on the show today. And with that, until next time, thank you for listening.